Coming up next is a longtime friend of mine and someone we all know very well. I refer to him as the godfather of self-defense. I'm sure everybody in this room has read the book, In the Gravest Extreme. If not, I highly recommend you grab a copy of it. But Massad Ayoob, he's more than just the president of the Second Amendment Foundation. He is a mentor to many people in this room. He has been to me. And as a many years guest on my radio show over the years, I can tell you he's responsible for providing the single funniest live on-air moment ever on my radio show, and it was called the Beer Mug segment. One of these days we'll tell you about it. But nobody can do it like Massad Ayoob can. The great one, Massad Ayoob. Pleasure.
Thank you. You know, I asked myself, why did they pick me to do this particular topic, the history of where we came from and the movement? And I could only come up with two reasons. Mark Walters needed somebody to tease, and they needed somebody really old. So, how really old? All our speakers asked the MC before we got up here, how much time do we have? And I asked Mark, how much time do I have? And he looked me up and down and said, doesn't look like you've got long.
No, that's not true. I said 14 minutes.
No, but it's a great line. Okay, we've come a long way. If you think we're in a bad situation now, you weren't around 50 years ago. Look where we are. At the beginning of January, the $200 tax on suppressors that's haunted us with our entire adult lives, actually for most of us our entire lives, is going to be gone. Within the last few days, Florida got open carry. And for that, don't thank the legislators, thank the courts, and thank the people who brought it through the courts, the Florida Carry Group, who are with us today. Give them a hand, please. Let's go back half a century, mid-1970s. Alan Gottlieb has just founded the Second Amendment Foundation. And you know where that took us through the Supreme Court and the great decisions that we've got. Alan is in the room. Please give him a hand. At that time, there were 7 states in this country where a law-abiding American adult had no legal right to carry, there was no way to get a permit to carry a loaded concealed handgun in public to protect themselves, their families, and their loved ones. Today, there are none. The last bastion fell in 2014. The state of Illinois finally got concealed carry, thanks in huge part to the people in this room from the Illinois State Rifle Association and Illinois Carry. Give them a hand. Back then, if you did live where you could get a concealed carry permit, it was almost certainly a may-issue state. There were only a handful of shall-issue, where the issuing authorities were mandated by law to grant the permit to every adult applicant with a clean criminal record or showed damn good cause. Why not? Washington, for example, had shall issue, New Hampshire. In the may issue states, it was totally arbitrary. They could defy you at will. The chiefs of police in the Hawaiian Islands got together and decided, well, the law says that permits exist, we're the ones to issue them, we'll just decide not to give them out. When I first went to Hawaii, I found out there were 2 concealed carry permits out in the entire state. One for the civilian armorer for Honolulu PD, and one for the lieutenant governor. There had been 3, but when the newspapers got hold of the fact that the Honolulu chief of police had given it to his sister-in-law, he had to take it back. And in many of those jurisdictions, not all, but many, may issue became a code word for we'll give you the permit if you're white, male, rich, and politically connected. Well, by the 2000s, that had flip-flopped. Okay, the vast majority of states by then were shall issue. And the final stake in the heart of that bullshit may issue scheme came in 2022 with the United States Supreme Court decision in Bruin. Back then, there was only one state that trusted its citizens and its visitors enough that they didn't require a permit to carry a loaded concealed handgun in public at all. They merely forbade the practice to any convicted felon or anyone adjudicated mentally incompetent, the state of Vermont. And where are we now? 29 states with constitutional carry. Let's go back a little shorter distance in time. Everyone you talk to will have gone through the pandemic of 2020 through basically 2023. The media told us it's not only the disease you have to worry about. Every firefighter, paramedic, and cop who comes in contact with a COVID-19 patient or even suspected contact has to be quarantined for 14 days, and so do any of their colleagues who work that shift with them. Emergency services are going to disappear. And it was a wake-up call that emptied the gun shop shelves, remember? An estimated 10 to 15 million people during the pandemic bought their guns and became their first guns and became armed citizens for the first time. The National Shooting Sports Foundation determined that from 2020 to 25, 26.2 million first-timers bought their guns. We need to understand people need a wake-up call. I want you to imagine that in New York City, a certain anti-gun billionaire decides he wants to go for a walk. So he leaves his giant mansion surrounded by his retinue of heavily armed bodyguards. And on the sidewalk, he sees a little girl pushing a stroller. And he says, "Little girl, what's in that stroller?" And she says, "It's my litter of newborn puppies. Adorable anti-gun puppies." And the anti-gun billionaire is just thrilled. It's made his day. There's nothing that you can't think about anything else for the rest of the week. And then it hits him. I'm missing a public relations opportunity. So he calls a huge press conference, not just his own captive puppets at the trace, but general media. He even invites the NRA Publications Committee so he can rub their nose in it. And they stake out the sidewalk, and sure enough, here comes a little girl in a stroller. And he says, "Turn on your cameras, turn on your recorders." He says, "Little girl, tell us what you have in that stroller." And she said, "It's my new puppies, my adorable pro-gun puppies." And he's horrified, and he says, "Wait a minute, kid, last week you told me those were anti-gun puppies." The kid looks at him and says, "Yeah, that was last week, now their eyes are open." How do we open people's eyes? The ancient ones had a name for it, and it exists today. They called it falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. False in one thing, false in all things. Lie to me about one part of this, I can't believe another word you say. Our job is to, more than we have been, point out the obvious lies of the prohibitionists. They blame us. How many of us have ever been to an NRA meeting and seen all the Bloomberg people with their posters, the blood of the innocent children is on your hands? Okay, 30 to 40,000 people die by the gun every year. Yeah, they do, and a huge number of those are gangbangers killing other gangbangers in turf wars. And because some of them are 18, 19, and 20-year-old gangbangers, actually a great many of them, the prohibitionists list them as children murdered with guns. Some of their tallies include officer-involved line-of-duty shootings of violent criminals and the self-defense shootings of violent criminals by private citizens. A couple of years ago, the Chicago Sun-Times was all upset in their editorials. The statistics showed since they got concealed carry, armed citizens were killing more criminals in justifiable homicides in the city of Chicago than the city's 13,000 police. Well, in justifiable homicide, the operative term is justifiable. It's justified only in a situation of immediate danger of death or great bodily harm to oneself or other innocent persons. Every one of those deaths represented at least one innocent life saved. And they inflate their statistics further. Oh, by the way, who remembers the Bloomberg bus that went around the country and the anti-gunners would read the list of the dead? Those people were booed back into their bus by the crowd when they did that at the State House Plaza in Concord, New Hampshire. And as a victim, they read off the name of Sarnav, the Boston Marathon bomber, who had been shot and wounded by police and then was run over by his equally crazy brother and killed in the getaway car. They tell us all this blood is on our hands, and every given year, gun deaths include 60% or more suicides. Now, certainly suicide is tragic, particularly the archetypal, emotionally driven suicide, the permanent solution to the temporary problem. Our side is doing more in actual suicide prevention than the prohibitionists who simply scream, ban the guns. I'm a proud member of the New Hampshire Firearms Safety Coalition that created the first of the gun shop projects in which firearms retailers are trained how to recognize signs of suicidal ideation in customers, and that's spread now around the country. But consider, there is also a thing called rational suicide. The terminal patient who is hopelessly incurable, their prognosis is nothing but agony, loss of control of their body, loss of their mind. And what would any of us do if one of our household pets was in that situation? We take them to the vet and have them mercifully euthanized. We now have MAID, M-A-I-D, medical assistance in death, physician-assisted suicide. It's the law of the land in 12 countries, including Canada. And it's now the law of the land in 12 of the United States, virtually all of them pro-states. And if the blue political people themselves admit this is suicide can be socially acceptable, it is absolutely disingenuous to conflate that with the criminal murder of the innocent, as they do. One thing you'll run across, we've all found that our side is when we win, we're winning on law and logic. When the other side wins, they win on emotion. Much of that emotion is driven by belief systems, and as much as we need to separate church and state, if we're going to win this debate, we have to speak the language of the other side. We have to read the room. It appalls me how many people think thou shalt not kill is the original, because the public needs to know what we know. In the original scripture, it said, thou shalt not what? Thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not kill with evil intent. The Bible is filled with justifications of the use of deadly force to protect the innocent from evil. The shepherd boy David faces the Philistine giant, Goliath, the ultimate example of disparity of force, and prevails because he has the sling and the stone, the projectile weapon that gives him range, that's small enough and light enough he can discreetly carry it concealed and have it available when he suddenly needs it. Do any of you ever carry some analog to that? And when that very same David became King David of Israel, he prayed to his God. In his prayer, you'll find it in Psalms 144:1. The Lord, my rock, give strength to my hands and power to my fingers for battle and for war. Now, I got a lot of people saying it's unchristian to carry a gun, especially those of you who recommend church security carrying guns in church. Who can quote me Luke 22:36? If thou hast not a sword, finish it for me. If thou hast not a sword, sell thy cloak and buy one. Why might a Christian carry a gun? Who was it who utters those words in the Bible? Jesus Christ himself. Jesus Christ has told those who follow him, arm yourselves with the most effective anti-personnel weapon of its time that you can conveniently carry. The other side accuses us of being hungry to kill because we carry deadly weapons. And they do not understand. All they see in the gun is its power to kill. From that power draws what is often a greater power, the power to deter. Every study of DGUs, defensive gun usages by private citizens of self-defense, shows that it's in the 90th percentile, no shots fired, no blood spilled because of deterrent effect. The attacker realizes, I'm about to die from a sudden and acute failure of my victim selection process, and I'm leaving now. And we can illustrate that with one final point from the Bible. You'll find it in the book of Acts. The story is told that one night an elderly widow was alone in her apartment reading her Bible, and she's in the book of Acts at section 238, I believe. And as she's reading that, she hears a crash, her door's been kicked in, and here in front of her is this hulking home invader. And he looks her in the face and says, "Oh, I wasn't expecting a witness. But no, you can identify me. I guess I have to kill you." And as he advances, she raises the Bible, says, "Acts 2:38." And he looks at her in absolute horror, throws himself to the floor, plunges himself up, and screams, "I surrender!" And she calls 911. The police come and cuff him up and take him away. And as they're putting him in the back of the patrol car, one of the officers says, "Some big tough thug you are. You surrendered to a tiny elderly woman who quoted a Bible passage?" The guy says, "Bible passage, nothing. She told me she had an axe and 238s. And in the 10 seconds I have left, one final point. You know how the prohibitionists are calling us gun owners fascists? They're going to call me a fascist, I can at least keep the train running on time. Hope you all get as much out of this conference as I do every year. Thank you for coming.